Ladies and gentlemen, you will see very soon that it's not only a declaration that is empty words. It means action for the future. This day is an historical day, and I'm honored to be here among you in this very symbolic place. Today was not only a day of analysis, discussion, and statement, but it was a day of truth, courage, and unity. This conference will stay in history not as a day of grim acknowledgement of weakness and helplessness, but as the first day of a new era. A time of steadfastness, of purposeful effort, and time of renewed energy and hope. It has been clearly exposed today. We are the victims of a slow but massive hostile societal engineering which ultimately aims to enforce Sharia law not only in our countries but in all humankind. This mad dream has already carved a bloody wound of pain, tears and slavery in human history, a still festering wound named jihad. This mad Sharia dream is being promoted by a small but powerful minority. But in totalitarian system, minorities always try to coerce entire societies through lies, violence, and indoctrination. And Sharia-inspired groups or societies are no exception. With the fog of lies, of deliberate disinformation and media manipulation, we were prevented from realizing the extent of this deadly threat and the identity of the main actors of this stealthy, subversive process already at work in the streets. But the day of blindness are over. It's finished now. We are no longer mesmerized and frightened by the atrocious campaign of defamation launched against us by empty words like Islamophobia or extreme right. Stupid. From today, the paradigm is changed, and I will summarize the new one in a very few words. We are the good guys. We and our countries are attacked, and we have the right and the duty to defend ourselves against Sharia enforcement. And anybody threatening us or trying to prosecute us for doing this has objectively made an alliance with the enemy of freedom and democracy, and therefore disgraced himself in regard of human decency. And one day, they will have to answer for that. But enough of the past. Let's act now for a better future. Today, in the European Parliament of Brussels, we invite all sincere defenders of freedom of speech and human rights all over the world to join us in this Brussels process, which aims, in the name of freedom and human dignity, to preserve our society and all our fellow human beings, whatever their origin, their belief from Sharia enforcement. We invite you, all of you, and all who see me on internet, because it will be recorded. It's a call for the world, for the entire world. We invite you to sign, and from then endorse, support, and promote the following declaration and its proposed policies, and to become an active member of the Brussels process. Thank you. And Elisabeth and Ned are going to read you this document. But this is not only a document, you see. It's a course of action. It's the beginning of a new era. The victim period is finished.
Before I start to read this, I want to add a historical note. The first Brussels declaration that I know of, there have been several, but the first one that I know of was on November 6, 1973, from here. It was the very beginning of Eurabia. I'm not sure of exactly what was in it, but one of the things it established for the first time was the rights of the Palestinian people, and it began the European Union's support of Palestine. This Brussels Declaration abrogates that one. 2012 Brussels Declaration to safeguard individual liberties and human rights, to preserve free speech, civil liberties, human rights, and democracy against all efforts to injure and usurp those universal principles. We call upon leaders in all nations to support this 2012 Brussels Declaration to safeguard individual liberties and human rights, reasserting that human rights and liberties are universal, individual, equal, inalienable, and self-evident irrespective of philosophical, cultural, or religious considerations as a matter of long-held principle, considering that any honest defender of democracy has the right and the duty to uphold and defend free speech, civil liberties, and human rights, affirming the irrefutable fact that Sharia law, as articulated and applied, is incompatible with and destructive to free speech, civil liberties, and human rights, and as such is incompatible with the fundamental principles of democracy, as stated in the 13th February 2003 judgment of the European Court of Human Rights. Acknowledging that the declaration known as the Cairo Declaration of Human Rights in Islam, also commonly referred to as the Cairo Declaration, curtails all human rights under Sharia law and Sharia normative behavior restrictions. And that comes from CDHRI Articles 22, 23, and 24. On the pretense that all human beings form one family whose members are united by their subordination to Allah. And that comes from Article 1 of the same document. Observing that the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC, being the creator of the Cairo Declaration and its current main proponent, has, by its continuous and single-minded activity, proven to be the principal international politico-religious organization working to restrict free speech, civil liberties, and human rights, and to enforce Sharia in the world. Asserting that any official endorsement or promotion of the Cairo Declaration or any cooperation with OIC that leads, by the test of consequences, to more enforcement of Sharia anywhere in the world identifies its perpetrator as an active opponent of democracy, freedom of speech, civil liberties, and human rights. Noting that such an identification renders illegitimate any attempt by the perpetrator to discuss or negotiate matters involving freedom of speech, civil liberties, and human rights in any local, national, or international forum.
The signatories solemnly require of their governments and civil society, 1, to commence a process to be known as the Brussels process, to implement the content of this declaration through education and policy initiatives at all levels of government and sectors of civil society in order to safeguard the future liberties and rights of our nations and children, so that all members of the human family may prosper as free individuals. 2, to decline any invitation to participate in any local, national, or international forum to discuss civil liberties, free speech, or human rights if the organizers, individual persons or organizations, are known proponents of the Cairo Declaration or societal Sharia enforcement, unless the negotiated or discussed topic is a transition of their codification and implementation of human rights to the UN DHR definitions and away from the Cairo Declaration definitions. 3, to protest any kind of participation in a local, national, or international meeting dedicated to the civil liberties, free speech, or human rights discussions or negotiations by any known proponents of the Cairo Declaration or societal Sharia enforcements unless they are only attending in an observational capacity or negotiating their entry in the Brussels process. 4. To initiate a thorough inquiry before any bilateral and multilateral cooperation about civil liberties, free speech, or human rights related matters in order to clearly identify any participants who are proponents for the Cairo Declaration or Sharia law, or who have cooperated and collaborated with the OIC and its associated organizations. Number 5. To reject and forbid any public funding for promotion of the Cairo Declaration or of any Sharia societal implementation and enforcement because such promotions are a direct attack against our most fundamental democratic principles and human rights. Number 6. To stop any cooperation with all known proponents of the Cairo Declaration at a national or international level when that cooperation has as its aim or result a restriction of civil liberties, free speech, or human rights in a democratic country until those proponents repudiate the Cairo Declaration. Number 7, to extend cooperation and support in all forums to former proponents of the Cairo Declaration who repudiate the suppression by the OIC and Sharia law of civil liberties, free speech, and human rights, and who assert that human rights and liberties are universal, individual, equal, unalienable, and self-evident, irrespective of philosophical, cultural, or religious considerations. And number 8, to engage with civil society and official organizations that work to safeguard individual liberties from suppression by Sharia law, especially those located in nations that are signatories of the Cairo Declaration or members of the OIC, to encourage dialogue, education, and understanding on individual liberties and human rights, as these terms have been commonly used in Western nations.